Hello. Thank you for tuning into the Natural Health Rising podcast. My name is Rachel Smith. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I've helped hundreds of people naturally reverse symptoms of autoimmune diseases and other health challenges, from digestive issues to hormone imbalances. And in these weekly episodes, you're going to learn from myself and top health experts from around the world about functional medicine and holistic health tips to help you rise to your healthiest, happiest self. Welcome to today's episode where I have the incredibly knowledgeable Mahwish Syed, who is a visionary at the intersection of health, healing, and the transformative power of design. At the forefront of New York City design for over 2 decades, she has orchestrated beauty through unveiling spaces that transcend aesthetics to nourish the soul and promote a healthy environment. She is an esteemed fashion and interior designer, acclaimed author, and cancer survivor. In her acclaimed book, Purgatory to Paradise, she unveils the profound influence of beauty as a healing force. She passionately explores how our surroundings shape our well-being, believing homes should be both visually stunning and physically beneficial for your health. Her unique approach seamlessly blends ancient wisdom with modern innovation, creating environments that not only captivate the eye, but also enrich the spirit. Featured in prestigious publications like the New York Times, Architectural Digest, and the cover of Hampton's Cottages and Gardens, Mahwish's designs transcend mere aesthetics. They embody healing and wellness. All right, welcome to the show, Mahwish.
Thanks so much for having me, Rachel.
Yeah, I was just telling you right before we press record that I was super excited because what you do is so interesting, very different. You're kind of a pioneer in what you do. So this is going to be a super cool conversation. But let's start off with some of your health story. And I want you to tell us a little bit about your journey with cancer, and more specifically, how did your battle with cancer become a journey towards designing a more authentic life? And what does living authentically mean to you now?
That's a great place to start. First of all, I want to clarify there was no battle with cancer. And this is what I wrote in my book, Purgatory to Paradise, is that it was a tango with cancer. It was a dance. And I used the metaphor of Persephone, the goddess of the seasons. And like she was kidnapped and taken down into her underworld, I was kidnapped and taken down into my underworld with cancer. But Hades was, I kind of looked at cancer from the lens of Hades being her divine lover and someone that she was married to and learned from. So I really took it upon myself to reframe cancer as not something to fight. And furthermore, if you look at the drama triangle where the doctor is the hero and the patient is a victim and the whatever illness is the villain, I divested myself from that paradigm because I believe we all are our own heroes, and that we, can go on our hero's journey, and the doctor is a part of our journey, but not necessarily the one to save us, but that we save ourselves.
How did you keep going in times, like, did you ever have moments where you had doubts or times of darkness? And if so, what really helped you keep going out of that?
Thank you. Of course, being in your underworld means having that level of grief, despair, despondency, fear. All of those emotions are real emotions that I think for many of us we try to, suppress and put away. And, we always have to feel good. And I think that's a fallacy. I think in order to be fully human and fully authentic, speaking of that word, it's embracing our shadow. It's embracing the parts of us that are less than perfect. And frankly, Rachel, that's where our humanity lies. Our humanity and our authenticity lies in that intersection between our shadow and our light.
That's really beautiful. I'm curious about if there was a pivotal moment for you where you realized that there was connection between beauty in your physical environment and also wellness.
Oh my God, where to begin? Well, let's start with the fact that I've been designing, I've been a fashion, jewelry, and interior designer for 25 years. And beauty, when everyone thinks of the word beauty, they think about stuff that's physical, that's, surface level, aesthetically. But the kind of beauty I'm speaking about is a spiritual beauty. It's a biological beauty, and how I define that is with cellular alignment. And when I discovered that my cancer was not genetic, after I went through the genetic testing, that it was indeed epigenetic, I started researching really what that meant. And frankly, most diseases are epigenetic, which means they are the result of our environment, our lifestyle, what we eat, who we're with, what kind of toxic relationships we're in. Like, all of those things matter. And so I started from a pragmatic standpoint as a designer, auditing my home. And I was like looking around thinking, okay, well, these Teflon pans have to go. Like, I started doing the research and thinking about, everyone thinks they're fairly healthy. We always give ourselves like, oh, yeah, I'm doing good, I exercise. But then in that gray zone, I find that there is a lot of hidden killers in our homes that we don't realize. And that's what really got me thinking. And also auditing my relationships, auditing the people in my life, thinking about, was I really happy? And cancer really was a wake-up call for me to investigate and to pursue a different lens. And so I started on a practical level that way. But something crazy happened. So when I was home and I was looking around my apartment, and I'm like, I make everybody else's place look beautiful, and I looked around at mine. I'm like, I really don't like this carpet. I really don't like what I'm seeing. And suddenly I started redecorating. But in the process of doing even that, I discovered the healing power of beauty. And now science backs it up. The science of neuroaesthetics, it's very new, but basically what it says is that your environment affects you on a biological level. It affects your nervous system. It affects your brain waves. And then when I started going down that rabbit hole, I started transforming my space. I became my own guinea pig and really looking at it through that lens. And oh my God, it's so delicious. Like, so much to talk to you about in so many different levels. So we can go from there.
Okay. Yeah, definitely a lot I want to talk about here. I want to dive into more of that beauty of the physical environment, but let's just highlight too, you started talking about like Teflon pans and these things too. What were some of the other offenders that you found that you were using on a daily basis that you realized were just not good for your health?
Well, you have a nutrition background, right? So I love that because I started studying all the things that I was imbibing. Not just what I was eating on, but also like really paying attention to the water I drank. Like for example, I eradicated all plastic from my kitchen, like any plastic, like anything at all. I started researching, the whole PFAS thing and the hormonal shift. I also, by the way, got my certification in quantum biology. So I'm studying nutrition from a quantum perspective and your environment from a quantum perspective, and what does that mean? Lighting from a designer's perspective is always so important. And suddenly looking at, and this is where it intersects with you, Rachel, lighting is a nutrient. Light is a nutrient. Okay?
Interesting.
And just as much as we eat junk food, we also imbibe junk light. Did you know that? So that's something I really started paying attention to because, for example, when I say junk light, I mean blue light from your screens, from the TV, your iPad, your phone. And now there are studies, and I do all this reading before bed of looking through scientific journals, but like there's an association with getting the wrong light at the wrong time and breast cancer.
Yeah.
So the idea of really creating rituals and creating zones, I started looking at it through that lens and creating mood. Like, for example, firelight is the only natural source of infrared light that helps you heal, that helps you increase your collagen in your skin. And yeah, everyone's doing LED red light therapy, but the natural source of red light that we are used to, other than the sun, has been firelight for millennia. Now, if you look at the human existence on this planet as a 24-hour cycle, a 24-hour clock, the last 30 seconds of our human existence has been electrified. So what has been our most natural source of light, other than the sun? Firelight. So by creating rituals in my bedroom, lighting candles, of course, toxin-free, paraffin-free, all of that. But like, to be able to kind of ground myself and create a mood with lighting is really, really important. And by the way, did you know that the location of your light in relationship to your body matters in a space?
Interesting. No.
Yeah, so think about overhead lighting that, I call it that lonely dome in a sea of ceiling that most people live in. Turn off your overhead lights at night. The reason why is the source of light first, number one, and the location of light above your head signals to your body that it's high noon. That causes confusion. So if you think about where the sun is in relationship to the horizon, we need to mimic that inside our homes by creating light where it's sconces or table lamps or standing lamps that are at our sitting down level. And frankly, I find the overhead light so harsh and unflattering. I only use it like in terms of jewelry in a room, because I think chandeliers are like the bling for your little black dress. So lighting is the bling for your outfit, and that's why I think it's important as a designer and as someone who's interested in the healing power of your home. And I truly believe that intersection is a wonderful way for us to access our healing in a whole different way.
Okay, so many questions. This is incredible. We definitely talk about blue light on this podcast. So if somebody's been listening, they've heard us talk about that. And one thing I always tell people is wear, really good blue light blocking glasses at night. And also, you have light receptors on your skin. So even if you're wearing the blue light blockers, but you have tons of lights on in your house and the sun is already set, your body is, like you said, even just the location of it, but also just it being on, your body's perceiving that it might be daytime outside, but it's really not. So you're confusing your whole circadian rhythm, your hormones and everything. So that's really cool that you're saying that firelight, though, specifically, if people want to add in more natural lights into their home at night, the best option would actually be like a non-toxic candle light for the evening time. Correct?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so impressed with you. The fact that you actually recognize that our body's a photoreceptor, which I always say it's amazing. So yeah, you can wear those glasses, but you're still imbibing that toxic light, which I love. And by the way, for your guests and for your listeners, I have a gift, which are my top 3 curated items, home items that you can use today that will create a healing oasis.
Awesome. We can put that in the show notes so people can grab that. What about the difference between certain types of light bulbs during the day? Do you have a preference on those?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that question, Rachel. Look, what has been touted as good for the environment is not necessarily good for our health. And in our zeal for improvement and being like environmentally friendly, we are actually very unfriendly to our health. Okay. And in my own home, when incandescents were being banned and not being sold anymore, I went out and got as many as I could, because I'm not a big fan of LED. The reason why, and I don't know if you know this, anyone can do this with their iPhone, is if you're in your space and you have your LED light on a dimmer, what you have to do is do what I call a strobe test. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You take your video, you put your iPhone on slow-mo on video, and you hold it for a minute or two to see whether the light is strobing. Now, the technology for LEDs, the way they dim is they actually turn off and on imperceptibly. Our body still feels it. And it's a major cause of headaches, epileptic seizures. People don't realize that if you're in an enclosed space and you're using LEDs on a dimmer switch, you are actually in a very big danger zone. So really watch out for LEDs that you have on a dimmer, because those bulbs will just turn on and off. If you really want a dim light, make sure the max light is on, so that way it's not turning off and on.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so I'm old school, halogen. But old school, I'm talking incandescent, halogen, and firelight, Rachel. Like fire, I'm sorry, I already am designing so many ways in which we can bring back firelight. But I also want to mention the color frequency, the colors of things matter. So whether it's 2700 Kelvin, I wouldn't go any higher than that. But if you want, and if you had a really bright bulb, change your lampshade. Change your lampshade. You know, create some warmth and some mood with your lampshade. Like I changed my lampshade seasonally, you know, to create, it's another accessory. Like, you know, you think, oh, it's there all the time. You can create mood by just changing your lampshade out, which I think is a really inexpensive hack.
I love that. I was actually really wanted to ask more questions about colors specifically. So this could go both with the lampshade or colors in the home in general. Are there actually go-to colors for things, whether that's the paint on the wall, the lampshade, for certain moods, for healing things, or is it actually more about what the person prefers?
That's a great question. I actually cover color in my course because so many people ask me this very same thing. With my clients, it's definitely subjective. I love to know what your favorite color is and why and what that's about. And I unpack the history and the intersection of the historical and the psychological and the biological aspects of color, which is super fascinating. Like, for example, red has traditionally been used in dining rooms because it actually increases your appetite. So it's like really interesting. Pink, for example, there was a study done with inmates where they used pink in holding cells and it calmed them down. So there are physiological connection between color and what you feel. So I would just basically go with what you like, but there is a case for why blue is calming, right? When you look at the ocean, when you look at the sky, it has a neurological effect. Green as well. Green is very calming. And in Islamic culture, green is the color of paradise.
That's so interesting. I just thought of one more thing about the lighting that I want to touch on, which is natural light. I know that when I go into a place, if there is no natural light, I am not staying there. I don't want to be there. It makes me depressed. It makes me feel non-productive. So how does someone strategize having natural light in their place?
Okay, that's great. 100%. Our circadian rhythm for millennia is tied to the beautiful spectrum. And by the way, most people don't realize that when you have sunlight on you, you're feeling the full spectrum. There's a balance between the red and the blue and all the unseen parts of the spectrum. And when you go inside, we don't have the benefit of that. We don't have the benefit, even with the LEDs, the blue portion of the LED is still out of whack when the sun is balanced and our body is used to absorbing the full spectrum of that sun. So from a designer's perspective, always obviously open your windows. Since sunlight isn't polarized, you're able to have it bounce off, because why I say open the windows as well is a lot of windows these days are laminated and they block certain spectrum of the UV, obviously for, environmental reasons, to save you money for your heating or cooling costs. But you're actually depriving yourself of that full spectrum of sun, and we need UV. So it's important to recognize that you need to open that window. The other thing I do, two things that I've done as a designer, is I use mirrors like a vampire slayer. I'm serious. Like if you look at the those old-fashioned cylinder skylights that people can install. Do you know how they get the light from, say, for example, 30 feet down? It's not just it's a mirrored, angled scope. So basically, you're using mirrors and bouncing light off of surfaces in order to bring light into certain spaces. So I would employ skylights if you could afford it. And what I've done is add mirrors, even like perpendicular to the window, to bring in that light and shine it against other parts of the space. So that's one. The other is, have you ever thought of laminating or doing like a high gloss ceiling? I've used,
No.
So think about it, it's so much fun. I did a pied here on Park Avenue, and it was a fairly low ceiling, and I was like, oh my God, let's do high gloss. Oh, can I tell you, from far away, it felt like it was double height, because it reflected the window higher. It felt bigger, but in addition, it reflected more light into the space.
I love that. That's so cool. And I think that the mirror one is great too, because that seems like a really, also like a low cost option that people can go grab a mirror for super cheap and place it strategically in their home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know on a very basic level that biophilic design, which is something you work with, has to do with integrating nature into our daily environments. Can you explain a little bit more about what biophilic design is and how it impacts our well-being?
Thank you for that question. I have always known, and I've grown up within so many gardens, and it was something that I naturally gravitated to as a child. But now biophilic design is more important than ever, because we, on a biological level, are connected to nature so much. We're beginning to finally recognize, science is catching up to what so many traditions have cultivated for so long. But that means not just plants in your home, which obviously for the sake of air filtration is great, but did you know that when your eyes gaze upon leaves, Rachel, it has a calming effect on your brainwaves? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you just made me think of my therapist's office in Arizona. She has the craziest, most beautiful office. You walk in, she has a green couch that is like, what is the material? It's like a soft, like felt type material, velvet. She's got pictures on the walls of leaves. She's got essential oils going with that, with like eucalyptus and fresh stuff. She's got like lots of greens and plants also. So I remember the first time I walked in there and I was like, whoa, I like this lady a lot, and it's so calming in here.
Oh my God, she's hitting all those senses. That's wild. That's wonderful. It's so great. And frankly, it's underutilized. I mean, there are studies. They did studies about hospitals, and they had a picture, like just a picture of a field. Then they also had like just a very kind of just a painting that evoked nature, so very abstract. And then they did a Jackson Pollock just to see if it was going to have any effect on the patients. And the ones that had even just a very soothing painting had an effect on increasing recovery rates versus the Jackson Pollock that, unfortunately, sorry Jackson, it didn't work. So the idea that even having art that evokes nature still has a signaling effect on our nervous system. And I think it's something to explore on every level. And I try to employ biophilic art whether or not someone says they can care for a plant. And by the way, there are studies that show that when you garden, when you take care of plants, especially now post-pandemic where the loneliness is its own epidemic, right? And it actually helps you calm down and feel less lonely when you're taking care of a plant.
How cool. So it sounds like choosing things that are green and lively looking plants, these things, trees on the photos or paintings, whatever you're choosing. What if it's a desert? What if, I come from Arizona and there's lots of desert paintings. Is that going to be different than choosing a forest painting versus a desert painting?
That's a good question. I don't think so. And by the way, succulents, I love succulents. I love cacti. They're so lovely. There's so much beauty there. I'm not saying like it has to be like a lush jungle, but I love the fact that you introduce different types of, whether it's a meadow, whether it's alpine, like I think all of those plants are still valid. One thing I want to add is, from a health point of view, plants have been doing this for millions of years. They have been filtering our air for millions of years. They are really good at it. NASA has a top 20 list. I actually vetted that list out and developed my own list based on ease of care, and especially like if you're in an office space and you don't have access to daylight, which plants can actually function in fluorescent light. So I have that list as well.
Oh, I'd love to see that. One that I'm thinking of that I love is probably on the list is the snake plant. Is that on the list?
That's on the list.
I am notorious for killing plants, and I love snake plants. I think they're beautiful. I've never killed one, and they're super easy to take care of, and they help filter the air. So that's one of my personal recommendations and favorites.
I love it. Mine, do you know they flower? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they can flower.
Okay, I've been doing it wrong then.
It's all right. But like, it's so crazy. Like one time it had white flowers. It's so interesting. But I think what's really important as well is the ethnobotany. And I want to mention something really interesting. When I was researching my chemo drug, Rachel, which was a really strong chemo drug, it was Taxotere. And that's derived from the Pacific yew tree. I did my research. And what I discovered was that, it's the tree of the dead. It's the tree of the druids. It's the tree of immortality. And the actual tree lives on for, I think the oldest one is over 2,000 years old. And from the outside, it looks withered and almost dead. And what I want to mention is this kind of poetic relationship we have with plants. So when I was being infused by this chemo drug, instead of feeling like it was killing my cells and visualizing that, I visualized being lit from the inside out with immortality from the wisdom of this tree.
Wow. That's really beautiful and powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I have meditations on that, and different ways to go through the cancer treatment process with grace and alignment. And frankly, I love the fact that, we're living in this world which nature is our medicine. It is the true medicine. Most people think of pills, but most of those pills come from somewhere. The derivatives are natural plants and minerals. So it's really one thing to kind of say, wait a second, this is a part of us, and how can I interweave the wisdom and the beauty along with the practical side? But I think the mythological portion of death and decay and rebirth and germination and fruiting and flowering. That's something that I design from.
That's amazing. Finishing up a little bit of the physical environment stuff, what if somebody doesn't know what they like? And I think of myself in the past, and I still struggle with this a little bit, but for a long time I would be scared to decorate my places because I'm like, I don't know what matches, I don't know what I like, I don't know what looks good. Where does someone start to learn how to connect with themselves and understand where they can start and what they actually enjoy?
Thank you for asking that. It's so common, and that's why, I call my book Purgatory to Paradise, because I think so many of us are afraid to make that leap of faith and live a life by default or just play it safe. And even when it comes to designing, I see so many clients who are like, I can see what their eyes gaze at, and they pick the safer option. So I feel like there's this feeling of, oh, I can't choose that. That's not for me. So one place to start, and I often ask, if I were to ask you, like, what did you like when you were 5 or 6? What were the things? What did your room look like? What did you play with? What colors was, what was your backpack color? What was your lunchbox color? What was, everybody has their favorite toy. What was that toy? So just to kind of spark those memories for you, because I think when you're a child, you're fearless. You don't think, oh, will so-and-so like this, or will someone think it's crazy? You just like something because you like it. And to use that as a starting off point to kind of re-examine and re-explore the parts of us, the shadow side, the underworld that we've kind of suppressed, and oh well, that was when I was little and I've outgrown that, like, oh my gosh, I'm mature and therefore I should choose mature things. And like, what does that mean? I mean, the older I get, seriously, the older I get, the more I realize how childlike I am. The more I'm reclaiming, that's why I call claiming my paradise. Claim your paradise. Claim the paradise that is inside each and every single one of us at all times, that is forever. It's evergreen. It's evergreen. It's that part of us that never dies, that still is in a state of wonder and delight. And that's really what your home should be about. Your home should feel good. Your home should make you happy. It should make you feel alive. That's your paradise.
I love that, and I resonate with that. I remember in my early 20s with some of my first places, I was like, okay, I'm an adult now. I'm going to have like the brown leather love seat and sofa. I'm going to have the black one. I'm going to have the brown one, the ones that are like neutral and everything matches. And I think last year or the year before, I bought a bright blue couch, like super, super bright blue. I'm like, this thing makes me happy when I look at it. It's my favorite color. I love to look at it every single day. And it's so funny to see that transformation when you start to tap into that for yourself.
Oh my God, I love the fact that you picked a bright blue. It reminds me of Yves Klein. I wrote about Yves Klein blue, and he's an artist who called it that it was this unseen moment becoming seen. It's that part of us that's full of possibilities. So the electric blue for me is something that is full of possibilities. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. Another thing that you encourage is for people to really embrace pleasure and beauty in their healing process. And so outside of some of the things we've talked about so far, what can that look like for someone to embrace that pleasure and beauty?
I think when you're going through any kind of illness, you need pleasure and beauty the most. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to wait until they heal in order to feel beautiful again, in order to feel pleasure again. And it's actually the opposite. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you need pleasure and beauty, especially then. But whether or not you're sick, I think everyone, it's your birthright. Beauty is your birthright. And how do I do that? Well, I created these rituals of reverence where I used my 5 senses, and there's a 6th sense, which is your intuition, where you just follow what really speaks to you. Like, for example, if you come across a plant in a plant shop that's not on the list, get it anyway, because obviously it's calling to you. So it's about building that inner GPS, making that stronger for yourself. And the senses, like your therapist's office, it hit the nail on the head, because she was using scent, she was using sight, she was using sound. So all these ways we can create a transformational experience. Think about, like, you know, the Four Seasons or any kind of like really fancy hotel. When you walk in the lobby, there's a certain scent that you smell. There's music playing. Your senses are being regaled. And I think, why not create that beautiful experience in your own home?
It sounds like it could take some people trial and error too, of like getting different essential oils, smelling different things. If you've never done any of these things before, you have to get them and try them out, see what feels good for you. You know, maybe buy yourself some flowers. Where do the flowers go? Should they go on your dining room table, or do they make you happier at your desk? I even think of things like drinking your water and putting fruit slices in it and things that make you happy and bring pleasure to drinking water, versus like you're drinking out of a wine glass right now, right? But of course it's not wine. I know you're not drinking wine. That's another really good example of bringing pleasure and beauty to your life in the most simplest way, of just drinking liquid out of a cup, but a nice fancy cup.
Oh, this is what I did. You know, I was supposed to, you know, buy a silk pillowcase to help my hair, you know, during chemo, to not cause too much friction. But instead of buying a pillowcase, because a lot of them were fake silk, they weren't real silk, I used an actual silk scarf, 100% silk scarf, and I just wrapped it. So those scarves come in real handy. You can use them to cover your pillows, to change up, just like you would, you know, your little black dress, to add that accessory and that pop of color or pattern. I think is really a wonderful, cheap, accessible, and inexpensive way to create beauty.
That's such a good tip. And you just said the word cheap and like accessible. Do you have any other tips for people if they're wanting to change their environment or change pieces of beauty and things that are low budget options?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, where to begin? Well, I teach this in my course. It's so important to recognize that we have access to beauty at all times. So if you want to break it down, lighting is, I think, really number one. And whether that means changing out your bulbs, changing your lampshades, changing the location of the lighting, moving your lighting around to, like the way I said, bring it at eye level, that is huge. And also in terms of accessories, I'm very tactile. I love texture. And by the way, I do want to mention, please stay away from synthetics. Like, really think about natural materials like wool, cotton, linen, jute. Indoor carpeting is the number one source of indoor air pollution. It's a hidden toxin. And whether it says lyocell, tencel, viscose, bamboo silk, all those things are code for stuff you don't want. Okay, they're not good for you. And what's happening with that is you're not only inhaling the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds that are off-gassing for years at a time. In addition to that, they are a part of the dust particles that you actually inhale over years as well, in the form of nanoparticles. And you do not want to be inhaling synthetics in your home. So really look at the materials that you surround yourself with from a health perspective. And also, certain materials have certain frequencies that are in alignment with our biology.
Yeah, VOCs are a really big problem that people don't think about because it's in so many things, even your furniture as well. Do you help people in your design process to choose the proper carpeting and materials and things that are more non-toxic as well?
Oh yeah. I curate for my clients. I mean, I'm not even offering things to them to look at that has, you know, any level of toxin in the material. And one thing you just hit upon in terms of furniture, it's better to buy a barnwood table or, repurposed solid wood than it is to do veneer or any type of veneer, because veneer means that there's adhesive, and that adhesive releases these gases over years at a time, like MDF or all these composite wood items. I would really try to stay away from. Yeah, they might be maybe 10% cheaper, but in the long run they're very expensive because they'll cost you your health.
Yep, it's so worth it to pay a little bit more for the stainless steel pans, the water filter, the non-toxic carpet now than getting sick later and possibly getting cancer, autoimmune diseases, all of these chronic illnesses and crazy illnesses that we can develop and cost you way more than what you would put in currently.
Yeah, we sacrifice our safety for convenience, Rachel, and I feel like, that there's a lot. There's a ubiquitous company, I won't name names, but it's like, it's washable. You can stick it in your laundry. I'm like, oh, you know what's so interesting? I went on their website, and it's really hard to find the content of these rugs. Like, they don't advertise the content. You have to really search and look, and they're not there. Why? Because if you actually knew, you wouldn't buy it. Anything that says washable or stain resistant or pet friendly is code for something that's not good for you. And I hate to say it, but like, we've used wool, which is biosustainable. We've used wool for thousands of years, and guess what? It cleans beautifully. So don't be afraid, don't be intimidated by silk and wool and cotton and linen, because these things we've been using for thousands of years for a reason.
Yeah, I have some wool bedding and things at home actually that I prefer and are really great non-toxic options. And you made another really good point of, if like, you have the power to look up the ingredients. If a company's not sharing that information with you, that's a red flag. And if they are sharing the information, then, if you're not working with somebody like you can also do your due diligence and look up some of those things and see, is this something I want to purchase and put into my home, which is actually going to get into my body as well.
It's wild how much, what I call, imposters are out there, and they look great. They look visually super great, but they're really not good for you.
I would love to hear if you have any quick stories of, because obviously you have a really powerful story, but any stories of clients where you've helped them transform a space and you've seen an impact on their well-being?
That's a great question. I have clients that I've grown with. We've had kids. I've known them before kids and then after kids, and creating the kids' environments. I think the real testament is when I see my clients thriving and coming back and seeing them wanting more and wanting to ask what's next, what can I learn, what's Mahwish into today, what did I learn besides going to Milan and seeing the best in design, but which is great, I'm not complaining about that, but I'll give you an example, and it's a simple thing. I was doing a window treatment for a client. Yeah, we're in New York City, and she kept her shades down, and I had never seen them up. And one day I'm really thinking about the circadian aspect of it, and I said, do you even open your windows, open your shades? She's like, no. I'm like, why not? She's like, oh, we're living in New York City, so there's people overlooking at all times. By the way, I have no curtains. I have standing panels that have, the verticality, but I have a whole green wall of just hanging plants that are my green curtain. So I said to her, well, we need to come up with some shears that will allow you to have that privacy and that feeling of security and still create the light that you need. And that's a simple hack, is figuring out ways to have beauty, but also have it affect your biology. And to me, That's real beauty, Rachel. Real beauty is from the inside out. When you're healthy and you're glowing, that's what I love seeing.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, this has been a really awesome conversation. I've learned things in this episode that doesn't always happen, so that's cool. I'd love to do a quick speed round. It doesn't necessarily have to be around some of the topics and things we talked about today. Okay. So first thing that comes to your mind, what's your favorite thing to do for stress reduction?
Dance.
What type of dance?
Bollywood.
I love it. Okay. I love dancing too. I do West Coast swing mostly.
Ooh, very nice.
It's super fun. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
To be able to time travel and see my grandparents again.
Oh, that's so sweet. What's your favorite hobby?
My favorite hobby is gardening. I love gardening. It's my lifeblood.
Mm-hmm. Best purchase you've made in the last year that cost you less than $100?
Orchids.
Ooh, okay.
Scented orchids.
Scented orchids.
Yeah.
What's the secret to keeping the orchids alive?
Good lighting, good humidity, and great drainage.
Okay. Final question. If you could leave the listeners with one tip to help them live a healthier, happier life that they could implement this week, what would it be?
Number one is to realize that you are your own gatekeeper. You can give yourself permission to embrace beauty, that beauty is your birthright, and it's not just for the very wealthy, it is for everyone, and that you have access to your paradise today.
So good. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Can you please share any last tidbits and where people can find you?
My website is claimyourparadise.com, and if you would like that list of the top 3 things, which is a free download, it's at claimyourparadise.com/podcast.
Amazing. We'll put that in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure, Rachel. Really lovely talking with you.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video and comment, letting me know what you enjoyed and what you want to see more of. Also, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get alerts when new content is coming out and you don't miss any videos. And just a quick reminder that this information is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness or medical condition. Please consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, supplements, or medical treatment. If you're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, please reach out to me. And thank you again for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.